Hi everyone, welcome back to TechCravers. So this is the Anbernic RG DS, Anbernic's Nintendo DS in 2025 concept, a dual screen handle that was supposed to let us play the entire DS library, dabble in a decent chunk of 3DS, all inside a DS inspired shell, and with a price tag that, on paper, sounded almost too good to be true. And that's kind of the problem, because when the RGDS first launched, it didn't just have a few minor quirks. It was getting absolutely cooked in early reviews, some people straight up called it unfinished, the kind of device where the idea is amazing, the hardware looks the part, but the actual experience just wasn't there yet. And because of that, I honestly wasn't even planning to review it, not when we've had a bunch of genuinely great dual screen options showing up lately, even if most of them cost a lot more. But then Anbernic messaged me, and apparently they have released a new firmware update version, 1.14. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend a single update magically fixes everything overnight, but what's interesting is that this update seems to target the exact pain points people complain about, things like weird dual screen behavior, inconsistent performance, and quality of life features that should have been there on day one. So I figured, what the hell, let's update the RGDS and see what actually changed. Is the RGDS finally good now?
Oh, shots fired!
Or is it still a half-baked mess with better marketing? Let's find out.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Now the first thing you need to do is to head to the link in the video description. That'll take you to Anbernic's Google Drive page where you can download 3 things. Their flashing tool called SD Disk Tool, the actual firmware file named update.img, and a small text file with instructions. Download all 3 to your computer, and just keep in mind the firmware image is around 5 GB, so it may take a while depending on your connection. You also need an empty micro SD card for this update since we're flashing the firmware onto the card first. So grab one now if you haven't done it already. Extract everything from the zip archive and then launch SD Disk Tool. Now, if the program opens in Chinese and you're, like me, and not exactly fluent, here's the quick fix. Close the program, then find the file called config.ini in the SD Disk Tool folder and open it in any text editor. Look for the line that says something like lang1file equals and change it from chinese.ini to english.ini, exactly like I'm doing here. Save the file, then launch SD Disk Tool again, and the interface should now be in English. Insert your microSD card into your computer, and then in SD Disk Tool select your microSD card from the drop-down at the top and make sure Upgrade Firmware is checked. Then click the Firmware button and locate the update.img file. Once that's selected, click Create to start flashing the microSD card. For me, the process took around 5 minutes, but it can be faster or slower depending on the speed of your microSD card and card reader. Oh, and it will ask you to format your SD card before the process begins. After a few minutes you should get a message saying the process completed successfully, and once you see that, safely eject the microSD card from your computer and insert it into your Anbernic device, and make sure that your device is fully powered off before you do this. Now a quick warning, this next step will erase everything stored internally on your RGDS, so only continue if you already backed up any files, save data or anything else you want to keep. Once you're ready, power on your RGDS with the update microSD card inserted, and after a short moment you should see a message indicating that the card is updating your device. This part also takes a while and there isn't really a progress bar telling you how much time is left, so the best thing to do is simply set the device down and leave it alone. In my case it took up to around 5 minutes. But after a while you should hopefully see more text appear on the screen, and at the bottom it will tell you to remove the microSD card. So go ahead and pull the card out and the device will reboot. After a moment, it should take you straight into Anbernic's usual first-time setup process, just like when you're setting up a brand new unit. And once you're back on the home screen, we can quickly check one of the first improvements right away. We now have separate brightness sliders for each screen. It's a small change, but it's something a lot of people have asked for, and it's genuinely useful for balancing visibility and saving battery. Now, one of the biggest issues with the RGDS before, and something YouTuber The Fox was one of the first to point out, was that the top screen would eventually drop to 40 Hz when you were doing something on the bottom screen at the same time. And it wasn't always instant, in many cases it would happen after 30 seconds or so, which almost made it worse, because you'd think everything was fine and then suddenly the motion on the top screen would start feeling off. Even worse, it could sometimes stay stuck there even if you closed whatever you were doing on the lower display. That meant that games using both screen, Sonic Rush is a perfect example, could end up running 40 Hz on the top screen while the bottom screen stayed at 60 Hz. You don't need an engineering degree to understand how bad that feels. It creates a mismatch in motion and input timing that's basically game breaking. But with this new update from Anbernic, at least in my testing so far, I haven't been able to reproduce that behavior. It really does seem like Anbernic has finally addressed both the frame rate drop and the screen synchronization problems that were haunting earlier firmware. So what did we learn from today's video? Well, first off, Anbernic has genuinely addressed and fixed several of the biggest launch issues with the RG DS, and honestly it's not exactly common for Anbernic to push meaningful post-launch updates like this, so the fact that they did it at all is a pretty strong sign that they're listening to feedback and that they had bigger plans for the RG DS than most people assumed after those first reviews. Now, the RG DS is still running a low-end chipset, and a lot of people were disappointed by just how rough the device felt at release. But with firmware 1.14, it finally feels like the RG DS is working the way Anbernic intended from the start. And if you already own one, the update process is a bit annoying. It's weird that the flashing tool defaults to Chinese with no clear instruction on how to change the language, but once you get through the update, the overall experience is massively improved compared to before. And the good news is that any new RG DS units ordered from Anbernic going forward should already come with the latest firmware installed, so most people won't have to worry about any of this. Anyway, if this video helped you out, or if you just enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate a like and a comment because it genuinely helps the channel a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.